Good afternoon, everybody, and it's great to see you here. Thanks very much for joining us. It's great to see lots of new faces and one or two familiar faces. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Alison Cornwell. I'm the president of ICAS. I also have a day job. President of ICAS is a role that you have for 12 months. But I joined the ICAS Council in 2018, so it feels as if it's been quite a big build up to my presidential year. I'm also Group Chief Financial Officer of View International. I qualified as a CA with Coopers and Lybrand in Glasgow, which then became PwC, and moved down to London as soon as I qualified and joined PwC Corporate Finance. Was there for 5 years, got promoted to senior manager, and then I knew I wanted to be in industry, and I left and joined the Walt Disney Company, and I was head of finance for their international television business. I was there for almost 10 years. We launched Disney Channel around the world. We grew our TV licensing business, licensing content to broadcasters in every country apart from the US. And we also had a portfolio of investments in third party broadcasters, quite substantial investments. So I found myself being a non-exec director of GMTV for many years because Disney used to own a stake in that. After Disney, I wanted to do something really entrepreneurial. So I got together with some other people and we put in a bid to buy the international Hallmark channel from a US business that was selling it. We were successful. We raised private equity money and we became the management team for that business. We ran that business for 2.5 years, sold it to NBC Universal. And then I was asked to join another PE-backed business called Alliance Films. We were the biggest film distributor in Canada. And I spent 1 week in every 3 for 6 years going to Toronto or Montreal, which now seems absolutely crazy, but that was just the thing you had to do. That was a fabulous experience. Even the winters where you get down to -35, -40, and you find this whole city underground, this labyrinth in Toronto and in Montreal, underground streets, so you can stay warm. We sold the business after 6 years, and I then joined View almost 11 years ago. And tomorrow's my last day at View. I was just speaking to some of my panelists saying today's been a bit of a strange day for me. I've been saying goodbye, but not goodbye forever, but just I'll see you later to all my team. The last few weeks I've been going around their overseas offices to see the finance people to say, good luck, all the best, I'll see you around. But what I've found over a fairly long career, and I feel with all those numbers I've thrown out at, if you add them up, you think surely she must be at least 100 years old. But friendships endure, and I'm having a network. Even tonight, I want to try and speak to as many of you as possible. After the formal session's finished, networks and friendships endure. And although I was sad, but I won't be spending as much time with my almost ex-colleagues, I know that we will see each other. We'll go to gigs, we'll go cycling, we'll do lots of things together. We'll keep in touch. So power of networks are very, very important. And I've got 2 months of my 12-month ICAS presidency to run, and I want to make the very most of that. ICAS is committed to be a leading voice in the finance profession and to speak out on issues of inequality. But leaders need to take action. Actions always speak louder than words. And organisations like ICAS, need to take tangible steps towards that and need to try to push the speed of the rate of change. And that's why events like tonight, I think, are so important. We've also recently begun scoping out the development for a new ICAS Women's Network. And the network will look to address the specific needs and challenges of women in the profession, no matter what stage, whether it's early stage, mid stage, late stage career. And I think they're a great way of taking action and providing opportunities, collaboration, connections, offering mutual support, and so on. And there'll be a focus on getting more women into professional leadership roles and developing strong pipeline of women into positions on ICAS boards, panels, and committees. This is something that if any of you have attended any of the events that ICAS have been running in the last 12 months, I'm absolutely passionate about. Come in and speak to me, speak to the team. There are so many boards, panels, committees that you could really add value to and get a lot out of as well. I took up one of those positions back in 2018 when I joined the council. And now 6 years later, I had the privilege of being here as the ICAS president. So if you are interested, again, your insight could be incredibly valuable to ICAS and the profession. Think of it as joining us your first mini non-executive role. I was astonished when I joined ICAS to see how many, an incredible number of boards, committees and panels there are. And they're usually looking for somebody to join. It's something you perhaps commit to for a 3-year term. And then if you want to stay for a second term, then that happens too. So again, there are lots of people constantly rotating on and off panels. And it's a great thing, I think, for you to get involved in. And of course, the more women we have in these types of influential positions and boards and committees, the more female perspectives will be represented. So again, if you're interested in joining or finding out about any more of these or getting involved in the Women's Network, please look out for Nafeni, who's there in the corner. And she is our ED9 manager, and she'll be happy to get you connected and to tell you more. We're also going to send out an email to everybody that's attending tonight with a link so that you can register your interest in Women's Network and help us to shape its future and its direction. So without further ado, and then great to see you, I will hand you over to Justine, who is the ICAS Head of Tax and who's come down from Leeds. Hello, over to you, Justine. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. Thank you, Alison. What a career, eh? But in addition to Alison's stellar career, I can also tell you that, her determination certainly shines through, because anybody who can cycle 1,000 miles from Land's End to John O'Groats to raise money for the ICAS Foundation, and she raised £25,500, I have to say, back in 2022. But this is it. She hasn't just cycled from Land's End to John O'Groats once. She's only gone and done it 3 times, hasn't she? Well, what wrapped it. Hell of a lot of chocolate cake that you can eat. Burnt off all those crusts.
That's why I do it.
That's the way I like to look at it. But yeah, absolutely amazing achievement, and well done, Alison. And what a dynamo. So what I'd like to start off by saying as well is delighted to be here tonight with you all, and here at Hayes, who are very kindly hosting this event with us this evening. So thank you for that. So I'd like to invite my panelists to the stage now, please. If we could have Ronke Odewumi, please. There you are, Lucky. As Ronke is a digital content creator, and the next person is Mimi Gon. Hi, Mimi. And Mate is a senior partner at St. James Wealth Management, and we're really supposed to thank you. You raise about your professional services here at Hayes. So we're going to run through a few questions of the panelists now, and we'll be holding a Q&A after the event, which is going to be around about 6 o'clock for about 15 minutes. So please consider what questions you'd like to ask these panelists and make sure you grow them thoroughly. And who do you want to address them to? So depending on the subject. So just to set the scene then, we've got the gender, wealth and pension gap to consider this evening. And I just want to start off by considering what the current landscape is and what the biggest challenges women face in closing that gender, wealth and pension gap. So, do any of you feel like answering that huge question, giving us all a solution? We might come to the conclusion by the end of the session, you see. And the other one is, what structural barriers and personal misconceptions do you think contribute most to this gap? So, what is it about women that means that we might not earn as much as men in many cases? We might not save as much towards pensions. We might not feel confident enough to put ourselves forward to those big jobs that we all know we can do just as well. All right? So that's what we need to think about. So, ladies, I'm going to start off with Ronke. And let's have a chat, Ronke. What are some common myths, can you tell me, that women might have about investing that you often come across in your line of work?
Thank you very much, Justine. Common myths that women talk to me about when it comes to investing is that they think investing is risky. A lot of women think investing is a risky endeavor. And what is more risky is actually leaving your money in a savings account that's not keeping up with inflation, because then you lose more money. So thinking it's risky is one. Women also think that they need to be financial experts. They think it's something that experts do. And since I'm not an expert, it's not for me. But now, investing has been made easier so that you don't have to be an expert to invest. There are lots of options that allow you as a layperson to invest. And a third myth is that a lot of women think they need to have a lot of money. I will start investing when I have £10,000 stashed away or £5,000 stashed away. But no, you can start with investing now with as little as £50. So that myth is something you should not believe at all. You can start investing with whatever you have right now.
So risk averse is one thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Not feeling like an expert, the second thing.
Yeah.
And then leaving it almost until it's too late to start saving.
Yeah. Waiting to have money.
Yeah. I can identify with that myself because I'm quite risk averse. And my husband is extremely risk averse. He doesn't even have any apps on his phone, for goodness sake. So, yeah, I can identify with that for sure. And by the way, when we go through this session, ladies, give me some anecdotes of your own, won't you? Let's put some illustrations on these questions. So, let me know then, Ronke, what are some simple, practical steps that an early career woman could take to start building wealth, even on a tight budget?
I think the first thing is to track your spending. You're not broke because you don't earn enough. You're broke because you're buying the wrong things. If you don't track your spending, you don't know where your money is going. And if you don't make a plan for your money, somebody else is making a plan for it. The stores, the sales, everybody else who wants to get a hand in your pocket is making a plan for your money. And if you're not in control of that money, you're going to be broke. So the first thing you need to do is track your spending. I'm not going to say, don't buy the coffees, don't buy the lattes. No, make a plan for them. If you're going to buy coffees, if you're going to buy lattes, decide how much you can afford to spend. A lot of us spend what we think we deserve, not what we have. So you deserve the shoes, you deserve the perfumes, you deserve the nice jacket. But will you afford it? Can you afford it though? So the first thing is to track your spending, because then you know how much you have, you know how much you can afford to invest or to save. And that's the first step in building wealth. Then the second practical step is to start small. Start with what you have. £50, £100, start with that. Register on an investing platform and start. Because the earlier you start, the more your money can grow. It can compound. So you need to start with what you have. And I think the other main trick is to take advantage of employer pension matching. A lot of employers offer you the opportunity to take part in a workplace pension, which they then match. Don't opt out. Opt in. It's easy money. It's free money. And every time you opt out, you're leaving money on the table. And they're not going to make you do it, because if you don't do it, it's money back in their pockets. Why should they make you? So you should, at the minimum, use up your employment contributions into a pension, max it out as much as you can. It also reduces your tax bill. The tax experts will confirm that it helps a little bit with the taxes. So do take advantage of employer contributions and avoid lifestyle inflation. For a lot of us, our wages increase a little bit regularly, but when they do, we just inflate our lifestyles. Suddenly, M&S is no longer good enough. Because now you earn a little bit more, but that little bit more should go to your savings, to your investing, and then it compounds over time.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. So we've got to basically buy less of these, right?
In October, be nice. And think more about putting money away.
I'm really glad you mentioned tax because, tax is my life, right? So I think that's really, really important, isn't it? To get that tax-free investment into your pension with your employer paying, either matching your contribution or at least paying up to the max of their contribution. That's so important. I mean, just to add a little bit to that, I've been in tax for 37 years now, and it's completely crazy. But somebody told me when I've started in tax, I was about a year in, and they told me, have you got a pension? Are you starting to put money away for your pension? I was like, what? That's years away. What are you talking about? And here I am 37 years later, and I don't feel a day older than I did then, and I'm probably no more mature either, mentally. But actually, what a great piece of advice that was. So important. Because I wouldn't have the pension pot that I've got today if I hadn't started back when I did. So, yeah, thanks for that, Ronke. Now, let me ask you another question.
Okay.
The smart investment choices. Tell us, what are the smart investment choices for women who want to grow their wealth but have limited time to manage their money?
Okay. So I've found over time that index funds and exchange traded funds are a great arc. So initially, when I started my investing journey, I would sit for hours, reading up on the different stocks analysis. I'll be on the Morningstar website, Yahoo Finance, Google Finance, name it. I was on it. I was reading the news. I was on the investing platforms, trying to understand everything. After all, I'm an accountant. I should know. But it's not the same thing. The fact that I'm an accountant doesn't mean I automatically understand what the companies are going to do. And I would spend hours and hours trying to make investing decisions. And a month later, I have to come back and do it all over again because I'm trying to invest £500. But you don't have to do all that. Go straight to index funds and exchange traded funds. Now, exchange traded funds are literally like a hamper basket of stocks or bonds. So somebody has put together these funds because they allow you to invest in a large number of assets in one fell swoop. And if it's an index fund, it means that it's tracking a specific index like the S&P 500 index. And so if you invest in such a fund, you're automatically invested in the largest 500 companies in the US by market capitalization. So it allows you to have a diversified portfolio very quickly without you having to choose individual stocks or do all of that research that I was trying to do. So I think a great arc for somebody with a limited amount of time who doesn't want to do research, who doesn't want to decide what the market is going to throw out, is to go for index funds and exchange traded funds that diversify your portfolio and expose you to a large number of assets in a very little space of time. The second trick or the second hack that helps if you don't have a lot of time are target date investment funds. Vanguard has very good ones. They would say 2040 retirement fund, 2045 or 2050. They're kind of tied to a retirement date and they adjust with your retirement plan. So they adjust the portfolio so the equity might reduce and the bonds might increase as they go closer to your retirement date, reducing the risk and kind of moving things around so that you don't have to do it. And then all you have to do every month is to put money to it. To pay yourself. You pay your future self the same way you pay your rent and your mortgage. You put £100, £200, £500, whatever you have, £50 into that investment, and it's automatically adjusted for you so that you don't have to do anything. So for me, these are the easy ways to invest when you don't want to do a lot of the homework because you don't have the time or you don't understand it enough.
Yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? It's quite intimidating,
Yes.
isn't it? And we're just talking about why do women not necessarily progress as far in their careers as men do a lot of the time. It's because they have the oomph, if you like, to put themselves forward for things, whereas we stand around feeling intimidated. So I guess that's a very good point anyway, isn't it, about not being intimidated, because you can become familiar with anything if you do enough homework, can't you? I mean, I never thought I was going to be able to read a tax case decision transcript, but hey, I read them every day now, and that's it. It's just common language for me. So it's just overcoming those humps, isn't it?
Overcoming them, but at the same time, you don't even have to.
Yeah.
To a large extent, these portfolio funds have been built to allow you to simply choose one and get out. There are portfolio funds that include so many funds. They are fund of funds. So they diversify you, they invest you across the world, they expose you to US funds, to UK funds, to real estate, to Japan. They expose you to everything, and you only have to pick one, and they adjust as the years go by, so you don't have to do anything. So that's the advantage, the fact that you don't even have to do all that homework if you don't want to.
Okay. I like the idea of not doing any homework.
Should I ask a question on that as well for someone who's starting out?
Yeah.
I presume as well you can look at your risk profile as well. So you can look at something which is lower risk if you feel slightly nervous about it.
Yes.
Also,
So
yes.
a lot of those funds as well, they will tell you the risk
Yes.
tolerance level
Yes.
of that fund, so you can decide what works for you. And if you have a lower risk tolerance, the fund is likely to have more bonds because bonds are fixed income assets. They are a loan to either a government or a corporate organization. So if you buy a bond, for example, if you buy the UK government bonds called gilts, you are basically giving a loan to Sir Starmer to run the government. And if you buy a US Treasury bond, you're giving a loan to Trump. And about that. But that's what you are doing when you buy a bond. So those funds are usually made up of stocks and bonds. And the more bonds you have, the lower your risk. The more stocks you have, the higher your risk. So if you are somebody who has a very low risk appetite, then you reduce the stocks and you raise the bonds. So you go for your fund that has more bonds. The older you are as well, the more bonds your portfolio should have, because you don't have a lot of time to recover your funds if things go funny. So you want to play a lot safer. So those funds allow you to do that.
Right. Thank you. So one more question for you then. How can women build wealth over time, even if they earn less than men do?
We do earn less than men do. Start early and stay consistent no matter what. Start early and just hang in there and do it and forget about it. Automate your investing. Don't make it something you do by mood. But you don't pay your bills by mood. You pay your bills. You find a way to pay your bills. And so just do it. Because a lot of women have, a lot of us are primary caregivers. So we end up working for fewer years than men. We take time off for maternity. We do all of those things. So whenever you are in work is the opportunity to build wealth. So definitely stay in it, start early, do the employer contribution that I mentioned earlier, and ask for more. We just don't ask for more enough. Like I have this impression that if a man has 20% of the skills required for the next level job, they knock on the door and ask for the job and say, I can do it. If a woman wants to ask for the next level job, she waits till she has 80% of the skills or 90. Then she goes in with, I think, I might. And we are too understanding for the employer. Just go in, ask for a promotion, ask for a salary increase, make a case for that opportunity. And you are not a tree. If they don't give it to you, dust up your CV and go somewhere else. Men do it all the time. But a lot of us, we don't. And you can only build as much wealth based on the income that you earn. So you should be motivated to earn as much as you can in the time that you are in work. So definitely go for that salary increase, go for that promotion as much as you can to increase how much you're taking home so that you can build wealth very quickly in the years that you are in work.
Okay, I will. Not too late. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to move on to Mimi now about with my topic. You're off the hook. You're off the hook, Ronki. Investing and planning for the future. So some questions for yourself, Mimi. So based on your experience, what key habits or strategies have you seen work for women trying to balance career growth and long-term wealth planning?
Great question. Though I was like, Ronke said it all. So I it's worried. Sit down now. No. It's interesting. Consistency, I think, is a key. Consistency, and not thinking it's too little. I think, Ronke really did say it when she said, start little, be consistent. Don't feel you need to have a massive lump sum before you can make a substantial dent in it. So I'll share from my experience. So in terms of career path, went to uni, thankfully. My parents laid a great foundation in that regard and went straight into a graduate job. And back then, zero understanding. I did have YouTube that you guys can all watch now, and you have influencers giving you advice for free. And so I remember thinking that my salary was not a lot at the time, which apparently it was above the national average, right? So I think, first of all, understanding your market niche, understanding your sector, understanding, now you have things like Glassdoor and a lot more transparency. And then also understanding of how credit works. Because when I started, I came from Nigeria, Kenya, Canada. And back in my home context at the time, a lot of things were paid for cash. So I had this thing about, man, with my salary, how am I ever going to afford a home? How am I ever, going to afford these things? Not understanding the power of credit. So two key foundation things as a young professional: understanding your market, which sector, what is a fair asking price, understanding where you are in the national average. So does anyone know what the national average salary is in the UK at the moment? That's the humans. But at the time, I'm going to betray how old I am now. And the sad thing about it is it actually hasn't moved that much in almost, 19 years. And it's an indicator of where the UK economy is, because our counterparts in the US have kept better pace. But essentially, at the time, it was £25,000 a year. And I was well over that, 10% over that. But I was looking at investment banking colleagues thinking, how come they get, But it's understanding where you sit in the spectrum, understanding how the economy actually works and how you can use tools like credit. We can focus a lot on investing. And at the time as well, I thought, this little £300 a month was what I thought I could put away. But I'm like, this isn't going to do anything, I want a punchy return. Like, how is this going to make the difference? But when you think about the power of compounding and consistency, they call that the eighth wonder of the world, I believe. And it's thinking about that £300 put away consistently over a 10-year horizon, growing at 8%, which for an industrial nation is quite a punchy growth rate. I was measuring it on the metric of, I want 20% growth rate. I'm going to put in my £300 at the end of the year. Why is it not 600? I'm kidding, but 10% would have meant 330 at the end of the year. And just thinking, okay, modest returns consistently over time, then that would be well over 45,000 in a decade, right? And just a small amount put away consistently. I really felt the power of it when I'd been at my role for 7+ years. And believe it or not, I was in a financial services role, and some of these things you take as given or read. And I believe a lot of you in the room are more financially sophisticated than 21-year-old me was, but you never know, so I'll put it out there. I realized the power of compounding and consistently putting money away when I finally took a look at my employer scheme after 7 years. And I thought, hey, is that money mine? How do I get that out? what do you mean I have to wait until I'm 55? But it was well over £50,000. And that's when I realized that if I had just been consistent on my own personal saving into my ISA, yeah, you know, it would be a completely different story as at that time. And a lot of the ISA individual savings allowance, the UK government is one of the more generous governments because no one else does this, where you can lock away money tax free and still have it accessible. And so they say you can put away 20,000 a year. And so utilizing ISAs, not just pensions, but utilizing ISAs in your personal investment, that 100, 300, or even £50 a month within your stocks and shares ISA, not your cash ISA base, can make a significant difference. Sorry, I talked about that pomades. But the other elements that I would add into this, which we don't necessarily see as wealth, but it actually is, and I know I'll make questions on this later, but understanding your workplace benefits. So beyond the pension, do you have access to private medical? Do you have access to income protection? Do you have access to critical illness cover? Do you have access to death in service? Do you know who your next of kin is? Don't assume that you filled out the nomination form that HR would know who to give what to something, what's a God forbid happen to you. And a lot of people are not cognizant, have no idea that they have death in service or that they need to fill out nomination forms for these things. Have no idea that there's something called income protection. Assume that the government will just take care of you if you were to fall ill or have an accident or be unable to work. Not realizing that if they do, the amount they give you is fairly nominal and might not you need that with your personal expenditure. So being mindful of those protections through work, but also if they are not in place, allocating some of your budget towards that as well. Yeah, because if something were to happen and you've invested consistently and you've managed to grow your pot to say 20,000, 200,000, whatever the case may be, based on what your cash flow is, it might just take one life event for all of those life savings to be wiped out and for you to be in a position of deficit. And as women, maybe I'm biased, but I see how much more we are impacted by complex health concerns deriving from gynecology primarily. And there are certain things that by having income protection in place, you kind of safeguard yourself financially if life's knocks do happen. And a 20-something-year-old me could not conceive of the fact that, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, I would be saying bye to my best friend at the time, who sadly cancer affected. And many of us in this room may have had really close family contacts who are no longer with us. By virtue of having a protection plan in place, there would have been something for her children or the next generation. And it's just a small premium. So oftentimes we can focus on the investing piece to the neglect of the protection piece. So I try and bring all of that aligned in a holistic plan and say, assess this, and I'll throw out an acronym, an easy one, that's got to do with food. So the acronym I throw out is understand your pie, understand your protection, understand your investments, and understand your estate plan. Yeah. And so when you think about that on a long-term time horizon, whether you're 65, 25, understand your pie. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's all good advice, isn't it? And I think for women especially as well, like when you've got children, they factor into future proofing your finances, your investments, because should the worst happen or you fall ill or something happens to you, you've still got to provide for those kids as well. And that it's such a big deal for people when things go wrong and the financial backing isn't there. So yeah, dead right. Let me move on and ask you another one. From your experience in wealth management, what specific advice would you give to young professionals about leveraging pensions early in their careers?
Great. And Ronke touched on this a bit. As I'm going to give specific advice, there's a financial advisor who can give guidance. So one of the key things I try to assess with my clients is understanding how your workplace pensions are actually work, right? So you have your employer scheme, and by law since 2014, due to something called auto enrollment, every employer needs to put money into your pension, and so do you. So typically, the legal minimum is 5%, and on your personal deductions, 3% on your employer deductions. Now, some employers do more. They say, okay, if you put more in, we'll put more in. So understand your employer matching and maximize it as much as possible, especially when your disposable income is high. If you don't have dependents and you have more savings and you're thinking about a secure retirement in the long run, understand your employer scheme and maximize matching. Now, you'll hear names like Royal London, Standard Life. How many people here, and I love audience protection, have actually logged into their employer scheme? Awesome. Amazing. I love this room. This is like, it's a room full of accountants. But logging into your employer scheme, first port of call, making sure that you know what fund you're invested in. So as Ronke shared earlier, the funds can be S&P 500 or geared more towards fixed income, depending on how risk averse you are. And so looking at the fund that you're in and deciding, is the one I want to be in? So if you're just in the default fund, and you're young, don't have dependents, I would question that. I would say, this is me, go 100% equities. What do you have to lose when you're younger, right? You're not going to access it until you're 55 or 57. And so that long-term time horizon enables you to take on more risk. But as you progress and as you approach the age at which you would want to access those funds and where you're less likely to want to have a downturn affect you, then maybe diversify into lower risk funds. But as a young, early stage professional, maximize your matching. Make sure you're not just in the boring standard default, which tends to really do okay. If you want to do more than just okay and you want to accelerate growth, then look at equity funds within the range that's available from your employer and switch into something that would offer you a bit more growth.
Yeah. It's actually amazing how I sit on the ICAS Pensions Governance Committee for the staff, and I've had interactions with pensions for many years because one of my specialisms is employment taxation, so I'm really into all that. And it's absolutely amazing how many people never move out of the default fund in any pension scheme. And it's crazy, really, because it's in your best interest to take absolute ownership of your own retirement, isn't it? So
That's true. And oftentimes when people have moved around and they have this one dotted here, that one dotted there, that some views where they say don't consolidate, keep it for diversification. Let me tell you from experience, you want to streamline as much as possible, especially when you come to withdrawing. You don't want to be dealing with 4 or 5 different organizations, 4 different bits of paperwork, HMRC calculation. It's a lot. So being able to log in and understand what you actually have, weigh the benefits of this pension versus that pension. And as you move from employer to employer, decide, do I want to consolidate to this current employer's fee or do I want to keep it separate? But I would have no more than 2 pension pots if at all possible, then just streamline to one. But yeah, it's what keeps me busy,
So tell me then, what are the biggest obstacles that hold women back from engaging with investing? How can we overcome these obstacles?
From engaging in investing, I would say, like all things, we know that chocolate cake is not necessarily what we should be going for. We should go for the broccoli. But head knowledge versus what you put in practice. I think making it a habit, automating it, setting money dates for yourself, because initially it's not the most fascinating subject. It's become a lot more interesting and a lot more accessible. If you think about like pre the internet, you'd have a stockbroker, you needed to be in the boys network to understand what was happening and what. Now the internet, click of a button, AI, ChatGPT, what should I do? But there's also a sense of overwhelm that comes with the flood of information that we now have. And I always like to say, it's about the little things and starting off small where you're hesitant and then being persistent and building on that. If you wait for that perfect eureka moment, I think people are waiting for that perfect angels and choirs singing, now the light shines and this is it. No, it is plain vanilla. It's a little boring, but just almost gritting your teeth and taking that first step. I think the other thing that makes it challenging is we don't talk about finance as much as men do, you know. We'll come, we'll talk about everything else, but we will say, oh, how are you investing your pension? It's almost a taboo subject. Or how are you investing your ISA? Whereas men tend to engage socially on that subject more. So I think women feeling the same confidence to say, I love your handbag, I love your hairstyle. Oh, by the way, how are you investing your ISA? Okay, not the most natural segue of conversation, but I do think it's about challenging your circle of friends and almost saying, okay, let's make this a collective goal. The same way you'd say, let's go to the gym, have your gym buddy, have your finance buddy. And failing that, that's where I come in as a financial advisor. I'll be your finance buddy. But men are more likely to engage a professional as well, and are more likely to speak to each other about it. And a goal shared or a burden shared is a burden halved. So I think having the comfort and the ability to speak to each other about finances without it feeling competitive as well is key. But it's initially, does it come across as the most fascinating subject for a lot of people? But once you do start to engage with it, it can, for me anyway, I find finance fascinating. There's one thing I'll share, it's still time. When I worked from Barclays, we had a financial personality assessment. You know those cosmopolitan quizzes where you do like 36 questions? So it was a 36 questionnaire. It asks you things like, I fear the worst, I look forward to the best. Are you a glass half full, glass half empty kind of person? And where we say women are generally more risk averse, what I found is we looked at personality across 6 dimensions, and market engagement was one. And so how engaged with the market are you, right? And if you aren't, and we don't want to, it's not a bad thing. That's where the index trackers come in and keep it easy. How likely are you to maintain your composure? So if markets go up, down, round the houses like the roller coaster, will you maintain your composure? The one that women consistently ranks lower on was, what is your perceived level of financial expertise? There's this perception that and even a room full of accountants, I'm sure if I asked that, and it's like this modesty conundrum, like men are told, put yourself out there. Girls are like, oh, I have to be. And I think even when the level of expertise is high, the perceived level of financial expertise do not high. And so that confidence to say, I can do this, I will do this, and enhancing that perception of financial expertise was part of my role, and it's still part of my role. I'd like to educate my clients to make sure that they see the power and the impact of the choices they're making. But I think understanding your financial personality, there were other metrics that is Barclays IP. This is being equated. I don't want them to come after me. So
I think that's really interesting because obviously we know about imposter syndrome, don't we? And we know, how intimidating that can be when you're sitting in a room and thinking, why am I here? What am I doing in here? I'm not good enough to be in this room. But you can have that feeling with financial matters as well. And you just think, but you can learn so much just from your friends. If you've got friends, you can all encourage each other to talk about this kind of thing. And you're right. I don't really remember having a conversation with any of my female friends about my ISA or whatever, but actually you could probably share a lot of thoughts and ideas and learn from each other in a friendly, safe space, which is a really good idea, isn't it?
Before you go on,
Yeah.
I was going to say that a good way that a few of my friends, and one of them is here, I've introduced money into our conversations is just going, have you seen Amazon share prices? It's gone up. Did you buy Amazon stock? Fantastic question. If they're asking them if they bought shoes. And then they tell you, no, I didn't. Should I? I bought them last year. Prices have gone up now. And I'm looking at Netflix. So it's a good way to kind of bring in that question into the room. And then suddenly, because you've had that conversation once, that friend has now become somebody you can talk to about investing.
okay. And one of the best, one of my I know my favorites, but I love this particular client. And she said, Mimi, what you're saying is too powerful. I'm gonna get my 5 best girlfriends. We are gonna do like a Zoom session for us. And that's what we did. It basically spent an hour on a Saturday morning chatting about finances. And you know, she was empowered enough herself and wanted to share it with her community. And I feel that when something is empowered, you do want to share it. You don't want to say, "Oh, have you heard about this latest thing?" There are regulations and safeguarding within finance, and I think that will segue to the next question. But I think making these conversations more regular, you know, it might be something that you do once a quarter. All right, let's have, rather than Galentine's, you know, let's have our finance, finance afternoon tea, you know, and just spend some time. I love hosting them. So
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the last one then. How important is it for women to seek professional financial advice? And what should they look for when choosing a financial advisor? So I guess tall, dark, and handsome for Atlas.
that's it. But I think it's integral for, especially in the way the UK economy is now. I wish financial advice was a bit more accessible. And I think it's integral for women to seek financial advice. And early on, I wish 22-year OB actually sat down with a financial advisor. And the interesting thing is the organization that I work for does make it very accessible to sit down with an advisor, get a bird's eye view, and actually put in place a consistent financial plan, and face-to-face advice. But not everyone takes it up because they often think, I need to be making hundreds of thousands before I sit down with an advisor. No, I think sitting down an advisor is key. At the very least, your plan will be validated, like be sense checked, and you'll be told, keep doing what you're doing. At the best, they'll say, actually need to consider A, D, C, D. What I tend to find is that women will tend to reach out when there is a crisis. So, oh my goodness, I'm almost preparing. I don't think I have enough. How do I figure this out? Or more often than not, divorce. Getting divorced, I don't know what he was the one in charge of the finances. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I should be asking for. And it breaks my heart, you know. And I also have had clients where I make more than him and he's gonna come after me and I don't know what to do. So it's a balance. So I think having financial advice is key. The things you look for in a financial advisor, basically have to be regulated by the FSMIC. Yeah. Make sure that you haven't one to just some quack who's gonna put you in the most complex thing. They need to be regulated by the FCA. And then more importantly, they have to be somebody that you can be transparent with and have rapport with. Because I know things about my clients that one of my clients told me, but my parents didn't even know I had cancer last year. Thankfully, I recovered from it. But her parents, no clue. Yeah. Just me and her husband are people who knew that she went through this. So you have to be able to be vulnerable with your advisor, transparent with your advisor. It's not just about, here's your investment portfolio, Mrs. Smith. It has to be something like, how are the kids? Are we going to put money in this one's junior ISA? Have we sorted out the will? You're privy to a lot of people's secrets. You're privy to the dynamics of their family relationships, who will inherit what. And so it has to be someone that you can be comfortable with and transparent with. They see yourself cultivating a long-term relationship with. Because for me, it's more than just, here's your ISA, here's your pension. It's a dialogue because your ISA and your pension represent the wealth that you want to sustain your lifestyle and that you want to pass on to the next generation. So aside from being FCA regulated with a reputable firm, being somebody that you can have a rapport with. I'm not going to say cheap because I don't believe you get what you pay for. So something that is within your budget, basically, as well.
Yeah.
And different firms work with different people. And apps work for some people. Robo-advice works for some people because some people just don't want that engagement. But if you know you benefit from relationships and face-to-face advice, and we all know as professionals, relationships are really the bread and butter of business. And I love meeting new people. I love connecting clients and, oh, you should speak to this person, and they'll come back and say, oh, thanks, Demi. Or people say, I'm thinking about this job. Should I? Somebody messaged me the other day. I felt I'm like, oh, this is so lovely. He said, oh, Mimi, thank you. I got the job. He connected me with this person. And guess what? I'm joining his team. And I said, oh, fantastic. He's like, I feel like I owe you. I'm like, you don't owe me anything. You did it off your own back. It's fine. If you weren't good, you wouldn't have gotten it. But it's so lovely when you get those expressions of gratitude. And for me, being an advisor is literally that. You can take my advice, you don't have to. But when you see something that you said something you should do just works and betters their life, that's why I do what I do. I love it.
Yeah. It's really important to have a good relationship, though, isn't it? Because, I want a financial advisor that I know is actually working on my stuff. I don't just want them to, tick a few boxes and pander to me and tell me, yeah, it's fine, yeah. And then behind the scenes, nothing's happening. I want to know what's going on. And, the closer I edge to falling off the perch, the more important it becomes, and the more I need my financial advisor to be really proactive and talk to me. I want a relationship because it's so important, isn't it? So, okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to move on to you now, Lorraine.
Exciting.
So, tell me, as someone who leads recruitment in the accountancy and finance sector
And tax.
tax. What trends have you observed regarding women progressing into leadership roles?
So I've been recruiting in finance since 2000, that's 25 years now. And I realised that before I came here today. It's like, wow. And what I would say is overall the trends are positive. So I'm going to talk a little bit about facts, and then I'll talk about my personal experience and the change I think I've seen. And I think it's important probably to have maybe a little bit of a discussion about the future as well. Yeah. Because there's lots going on politically at the moment, and that's quite interesting, isn't it? So firstly, if you think about the facts, there's been quite a lot of press this year on the government report that's been released around the FTSE 350 Women Leaders Review. And the latest one, the facts that came out said that now at board level in the FTSE 350, it's 43% women, which on the face of it looks great. I think if you delve into, and if you look 15 years back, so I look back at the history, it was 25%. So certainly that says there's a positive trend, which is great. But I think if you look into that in more detail, what also came out was that real exec, C-suite, CEO, CFO is around 30%.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it says is I think lasting change, you can't just create overnight. It takes time. We're heading in the right direction, but there's more work to do. I think if you look at the FTSE 100, it oscillates a little bit. I think it's around 10% female CFOs. I do an awful lot with accounting firms as well. A lot of my personal networks are there. And if you look at the top 100 accounting firms now, it is different from different areas of fee earning. So if you think tax, actually, for some really good parity now, but there is that 45 to 50%, where it deals, it's much lower, it's about 10%. Overall, though, in the top 100 accounting firms, it's 27%. I found that quite interesting. I thought it may have been a bit higher. But it's certainly different when I started my career. So there's some facts which demonstrates we're going in the right direction. When I first started my career, most of the people that I reported into were male, and my clients were male. So recruiting in finance, whether I was engaging with a CFO or a partner, and actually they weren't just male; they were usually white, and they usually had privilege as well, and that was just factual. That just tended to be the way the world worked. And again, I still have very good relationships with these individuals, but I very much felt I had to lean into that at the start of my career. Still build a genuine business relationship, but I felt that the boutique had joy. I was probably diversity because I had a northern accent. You know, it was a slightly different world. So why has it changed, and what have I seen the big changes? So I think step one, there has been some absolutely brilliant female trailblazers. And I've just met Alison, and I've just met yourself. I want to put you both in that category. And that were females that were probably doing it for the first time and didn't have a role model.
Yeah.
Right? So I think once you've got a role model and a community, I'm not saying it's easy, but it becomes slightly easier because you can see where it's been done before. But there were so many females that I met that they were doing it for the first time. And there was sometimes some compromise was required, a lot of strength was required, and also a real passion for the job. And that was both internally my day-to-day job, but also externally with clients. So I think the first change and what's really come about is having those female trailblazers, because if you think females were newer to the workplace, they weren't in the workplace for many years. So I think that's been really, really big. And I also think at females, and again, I'm gender stereotyping a little bit, but very good at putting the ladder down. So then once you had those trailblazers, then you started to create communities very, very quickly, and the ladder was coming down, but whilst being inclusive to all. Because we all know a good work environment is about inclusion. It's not about diversity. It's about inclusion, because that creates diversity. From a second point, I think there were some great allies. There were some great allies as well, and I noted that. Now, I think both internally and externally, there came a point probably when I had my first child, and this was about 2000. When was it? When did I have my first child? But it started in about 2010. I had my child in 2012. And started with this conversation around, hang on, we've got about 50-50 graduate level, and we're losing all these amazing females. Yeah. And commercially, we're missing out, right? So there was a commercial reason. Now, whether allyship came from commercial reasoning because partners and CFOs realized the value females can add, or it became from doing the right thing, I don't think it really matters. The point is, it really started to drive things forward. So when I started in recruitment, it was 8 till 8, and that was not a discussion. I remember once leaving at 7 p.m. and being told to go back in and do some more work, right? It's just the way it was. So when I had my first child, they called me like, they couldn't say, are you coming back? But they really wanted me to. And they're like, you can leave early. So they let me leave at 5 o'clock. To pick my child up from nursery, because then we were 100% in the office. But even that was big, because at that point I was working for another recruitment company then, but the CEOs all started to get behind it, because again, bonuses started to be based on it, because there was that commercial loss. So there was, as well as having brilliant females that were creating communities, there were some brilliant males who had that allyship and really cared, but then there was that commercial impacts, which I think really did drive things, because females are doing a great job. And then thirdly, I think that then socially, it then became unacceptable to not support females, to not, and then you had to think about, well, hang on, I had loads of clients saying, could you just get me some senior females? Like consumption of talent. And we all know it's about creation of talent. You can't just consume talent without having that right background for them. So it was about what did males wanted it as well, actually. And it was like, probably males wanted to see their kids at night and get home to have a bath and, bath your child. But for those that didn't have children, they wanted to have a better work-life balance. So HR policies started to change, culture started to change. And for me, I'm really passionate actually about that gender balance, because I think males and females bring something very different to an organization. And I've seen that really develop over the last 20, 25 years. And there's always more work to do with inclusion. There's always more work to do, but I still think there's been a really good progression. From a third perspective in the future, well, politically, and the press certainly over the last 6 months, there's been some interesting things. Has the pendulum, gone the other way? I think factually, of course, there's been a few large US large corporates that have decided not to invest in DE&I. I think also there are definitely financial pressures for most businesses this year. So I think I think it might cause an action pause, but I don't think it will be a regression. So, for example, there might not be the money to get an external trainer to help with some inclusion training this year. I'm just using that as an example. But I think that overall, what you have is proof that inclusion and having gender balance commercially creates a better business. And you also have a number of impressive senior leaders now across all business sectors that are female, who really want to put the ladder down and run events like this. Also, with that, I think the UK government is very, very supportive of inclusion, and in particular senior female leadership. So I think there's work to do, but I think it will continue.
Oh, that's really good. That's good to hear, isn't it? I think just from my own perspective, when I first started out, because I started life in tax as a tax inspector for HMRC. So I did that for quite a long time, and I inspected large businesses. So I used to travel all over the UK inspecting the 3,000 largest employers in the UK, which included everything from banks to local authorities to NHS trusts to prisons, you know what. But there was a really, I've always been lucky in that respect, because when I moved over to private practice, I was in a similar position. When I went to work for Ernst & Young, when I left HMRC, there was always a woman who I thought, I want to do what she's doing. I want that. And she was prepared to kind of mentor you. It's always been a very, very lucky situation that I found myself in those positions. I remember working for a lady at EY in Leeds called Sarah Hyde, and at that time she then became the national head of tax at Ernst & Young, and she was an absolutely wonderful woman. She had an allotment and everything. She was so down to earth. She was from Leeds, really down to earth lady, but what a great leader. She was just so inspirational in everything she did, and she included everybody and took them all along for the ride. It's great. And it was the same at HMRC. There was a lady there. And when I worked for BDO, I worked for a partner called Janet Adam. And most people thought of her as some kind of monster. But actually, she was very far from a monster. She was a wonderful mentor. And she really inspired you to want to reach the pinnacle of your own career. She was great. So I think it's wonderful to be able to look for somebody who you can pin those hopes onto and aspire to be like them. It's so useful. Let me move on and ask you another question. Tell me what practical tips you would give to women negotiating salaries, promotions, or benefits. We'll go to that.
On salaries, you did that one for me. But let's start with salaries. So I think firstly, it's all about preparation. So getting your facts right. Just saying, Hayes have a brilliant finance salary guide. But we do a really comprehensive salary guide. But look, find out the facts, understand, are you paid market rate? Understand that before you start. But it's not just about, are you paid market rates? It's understanding your worth as a person as well, and really preparing for that. Like, what makes you stand out? You know, what have you done well? And that will really help you to back yourself, and then in the moment not get flustered. So that preparation of market information and you and what you've achieved, I think is really, really important. Then once you have all that, I think then you need to be positive. So I think when someone, if they go into their boss, or if they're going into a salary negotiation when you've got an offer, just to back someone into a corner never works well, does it? So I think it's about having that really positive attitude. So if you're at your current business or firm, It's about, talking about what you enjoy about working for the firm, for example, why you're looking for the salary increase, but not, I think, if you go in negative and just like, I'm unhappy, I want to leave, I want an increase in salary, I'm not sure you're going to get the outcome that you want. Because if someone came to me like that, I'm not sure. I feel a bit bad. I've just need a moment to think it through. I think that was quite negative. So first, be positive. And the last bit, which is really important, is that confidence and backing yourself. And I think having that preparation, having those facts, and having that confidence is really, really important. You don't need to threaten leaving at that point. You don't need to do that. It's just about saying, this is who I am. This is my work. How do I know that? This is why. But your leader is likely to say, okay, why? Why do you want a salary increase? That might not be contentious. They might not be trying to upset you. They just might want more information. So it's about being ready and having that, like say, confidence and preparation and positivity.
Yeah, absolutely right. And there's also a tendency to, it's a little bit like a sort of, have you got a parent-child relationship with your employer? Or are you speaking to them on equal terms as an adult to adult? Because if you are, then you can have that adult conversation without feeling that, you're compromising anything. You don't need to lose your temper or get upset or start crying or whatever. You're just having a conversation with another adult at the end of the day. Whereas if you've got this imbalance in the relationship, then that's when things can start to go wrong and people start to get upset or whatever. It's important. I'm going to move on though, because we need to go to Q&A. But Mimi, so we'll sit up with you in a minute.
You've got some great chat though.
Let me do this last question, and then we'll move on to Q&A. Thank you, guys. What role does mentorship and sponsorship play in career advancement, and how can women proactively seek out those opportunities?
Well, you just set the scene, love. You just set that scene really well for the answer to that. But I think step one is sponsorship is different from mentorship. Now, sponsorship can happen really organically, and when it does, it's amazing. You just might happen to be in a team. Now, this could be with a male or a female, but it's normally a leader who you just click with, and they understand you, they push you, and you have that wonderful relationship where you totally trust them, and that if they're around the board table and you're not, they are pushing you forward, and that is phenomenal when that happens. But life doesn't always work that way, and sometimes you have to work to get those sponsors, still be authentically you, but you're ultimately responsible for the energy you put in the room to others. And sometimes it could be that there's someone that you really aspire to, but maybe they've not turned their eye to you. Maybe they don't spend as much time with you. And that could take some effort to get that sponsorship. But carry on with that. I think that sponsorship in a leader is very important, or leaders, but actually sponsorship in your colleagues as well is also really important, and working together as a team. And that is also all about the energy. What are you doing for them? How are they interacting with you? Now, not for one moment do I think anybody should stay in a toxic culture, but at the same time, just be mindful. I think you mentioned one of your partners, other people were scared of her because I hadn't got to know her.
Yeah.
But she was actually a brilliant sponsor, but you had to take the time to get to understand her. And I think sometimes we can be a little bit scared, maybe. So it's not always straightforward, but it's worthwhile working at. I think mentorship is slightly different. So Jane Donnelly is here today, and myself and Jane lead we call it We Lead Network, which is our female network at Hayes. Well, Jane leads it actually. I just help her out with stuff. And we're piloting a mentor scheme at the moment. So you've done so many sessions on this and gone really deep into mentoring actually, and what it really is and what it means. Because the females here at Hayes, the number one thing they asked for was mentorship and how important that is. And again, when you look at all the stats, it's very important for many females in the workplace. what came out of all the research we did, though, was the most effective mentorship. It's not someone that works closely with you. It's not about what you're doing operational. It's not about your technical skills. It's usually around softer skill development. So I think from a mentor, you could, it's very hard, I think, for you, the person that works closely with you as a leader to mentor you. But you can look a bit further in your business. You know, Alison talked about it, start looking ICAST. There could be many individuals that are there and that can mentor you that you don't work directly with. I certainly have some clients that are mentors to me that are, you know, it's really important. It's really great to get their viewpoint as someone I really trust. And again, there are people that are usually more experienced than me. They've got a very different outlook on things. And that really helps me personally. So I think with this as well, don't just wait for a mentor to come to you. A mentor's never really going to come to you. It's about making sure you go to individuals that you connect with. Because again, I think so many females are so happy to put the ladder down and to share their knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think to add a couple of final words, I think actually, what greater compliment is there to give somebody and to go up to them and say, would you mind mentoring me for a bit? Because, you know, I really admire you. I really, you know, think that your work ethic is great. I want to learn from you. Who's going to say no to that? How many people would actually say, no, I don't really want to do that? Because you've just given them the biggest compliment that you could probably give anybody, haven't you? So it's always worth seeking out people and getting them to give you some of their knowledge. And you can always learn. It's life's a lesson, isn't it? They're all on a lifelong learning journey.
And just to add,
That's the way I look at it.
really simply as well.
Yeah.
There's kind of upward mentoring as well. So you can learn from your mentee as well.
Yes,
Your mentoring,
absolutely.
you can learn so much.
Mutual.
I mean, certainly, you know, people teach me about how to turn a computer on. You know, technology. You know, there's so much to learn.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.